Hello, class. I like to talk to you a little bit about ethical dilemmas, ethical situations that perhaps you can work your way through. This is certainly an honor system. I'm not collecting or grading any of these things, but it might be helpful to go through them. Sometimes I will put ethical dilemmas on a final exam. In our face-to-face class, we spend time discussing these things back and forth with the students, trying to get them to think about how to work their way through these kinds of ethical problems. And it's similar to what you might find in a big CPA firm or a large corporation that's trying to train their people. Some of the stuff that I'm going to show you actually comes from KPMG University, it's called. KPMG has their own training program. I think it's still called KPMG University, although after the Trump University controversies, they may have changed the name. But it's training. I think it's called the Ethical Compass or something to that effect. They train their people. They give them these little scenarios, and they ask them to apply what they have taught them in terms of their own internal standards of conduct and standards of conduct like the IMA one that I went through in a previous screencast, and or the AICPA standards, those kinds of things. I have I'm on the screen right now. I have the ethics folder from my courses, and you'll see in here that there's a document called laptop policy, which I often like you to look at. That's just an example of a company policy on how to manage laptops, because there's a lot of issues regarding privacy and security with that kind of company asset today. And I put that in there because one of the ethical dilemmas that's presented in one of these folders has to do with negligent use of a laptop, negligent custody, you might say, of a laptop. Here's the IMA's standards of ethical practice. I allude to that in another screencast where I kind of talk our way through that. You should read those and you should watch the screencast. It's only like 15 minutes. And then there's the ethics for accountants, which is really it's just what they call a learning module. And if I could ever open this, let's see if we can get this open. We'll get started here. I've been having connection issues, so just bear with me. You might want to get a coffee because it looks like it's gonna take a while. Let's I don't know why this is taking so long to open. Probably lost my connection. No, still there. It's just taking a while. Here we go. Sorry about that. So in this folder, yours will look a little bit different, but down near the bottom here, ethics mini cases is where I'm going. And I think it's kind of a sloppy look, but it's I scanned these ethical compass. This is from KPMG. I scanned these some time ago, and I'd like you to take a moment to read this top part here, the full-time authors, and then think about how would you respond to this. You know, this person is looking at a start date, looking at a new job. She's in her senior year, and she had her heart set on working for some top-notch company. Didn't get that, and then gets an offer from maybe her second or third choice, accepts it, and then sometime later she receives an offer at a salary 30% greater than the job she had accepted at a local firm. And her name is Monica, and the question that would be asked at KPMG is, what should Monica do? in thinking this through, a lot of our students, a lot of our interns, for example, were confronted with similar type situations. I know a few that accepted a job right away and then found out that a Big Four wanted them and had more money, and they quickly either quit or reneged on their acceptance. I got to tell you, that irks the CPA firms, gets them upset. And the question is why? You know, and think about that. Why would someone who's offered you a job and now is planning on having you come on board, and then you go and jump at the next best thing that comes, the best thing that comes along soon afterwards? Why is that a problem? Now, I know people who switch jobs often, but I've always told folks, you should at least give your employer a year or two. I know it's always greener. What's the saying? It's always greener in the other yard or whatever. Yeah, there's always another opportunity out there. But the question is, what does your word mean? You know, if you gave your word, you're going to accept the job. These firms in these kinds of scenarios, they plan for you to come on board. They've got you budgeted in. They've got resources ready. And when you say no, they've got to go out and find somebody else. So the basic answer here is it is ethically incorrect to do something like that. This next one here, these are very short scenarios, and what happens at KPMG is they show you a video first, and then they discuss these. So you're not getting to see the video because I don't have the videos. I wouldn't want to drag this out too long anyway. But in this one, this scenario says Phil, an employee of an accounting firm, is dealing with a potential conflict of interest. He tells his colleague, and let's put a name on the colleague, Carrie. Tells his colleague, Carrie, that he was approached by his client who wants to provide his nephew's resume for a potential job opening for subcontracting work at the accounting firm. Phil is unsure what to do. So then these discussion questions come about. So just make sure you understand the facts first of all. Phil works at an accounting firm. He has a client who has a nephew. The client wants Phil to take that resume and try to help this kid get a job. What should Phil do? He's asking Carrie, a coworker, which, by the way, is a wise thing to do. If you have a trusted coworker, you can bounce this off a coworker. I used to bounce these things off my wife because she is a professional. She's actually a nurse, but she also had an MBA. She's several degrees, a graduate degree. She's a smart person. She's very ethical. So I would bounce. If you get a trusted advisor, somebody like that, you can bounce these things off of. And that's one of the points that they would make at KPMG. But if you were in Carrie's shoes, how would you react? And A says, none. What advice would you give? None. I just changed the subject. That's A. That's not right, because you have a professional responsibility, they'll tell you, to deal with issues that seem unethical. B, I would tell Phil to add the resume to the client for the client's nephew in with others. He's unlikely to get hired anyway. Again, B is not, you're not coping with the situation. You're just throwing it in a file. C, I would suggest Phil confront the client himself about his concerns. And D, I would suggest Phil ask a superior or another resource in the firm how to proceed. And actually, the best two answers are C and D, but KPMG would go with D first because they'd like a supervisor to get involved and guide Phil through this to handle it properly. Because a confrontation, unless you're rightly coached on it, it could be bad and you could lose a client and it could be a mess. So they always tell you to work up the chain of command and to look at KPMG resources for help when you have ethical dilemmas. This case study is about an internship, and Jack was hired as a new intern at a large firm, and some of his classmates also accepted summer intern positions at that same organization. During orientation, the names and biographies of other summer interns were distributed. Jack noticed that Matthew Smith, one of his classmates who worked with Jack last summer at a local accounting firm, had been hired too. So Jack is quite familiar with Matthew. Matthew appeared to have used a great deal of creative license in reporting his accomplishments. Not only did Matthew exaggerate about the responsibilities he held for Beta Alpha Psi. That's a National Financial Honor Society. By the way, we have that at UMass Dartmouth, and some of you who have high grade GPAs should look into that. You should get in touch with, I think it's Professor Jacobson who runs that, because you ought to get that on your resume. If you're legitimately involved with Beta Alpha Psi, you should have it on your resume. But this guy has enhanced that a little bit. He's fabricated some of his work experiences and his work within that Beta Alpha Psi. He's taking creative license. That's a polite way of saying he's lying about his credentials. This company, ABCD LLP, like most other companies, has thorough reference checks for full-time positions, but not for summer internships. And the recruiting manager asked Jack if he was looking forward to working with Matthew this summer. And the question is, what should Jack do? And KPMG is really strict on this. They think that Jack should report this embellishment, that somebody should look into it. And their reasoning for this is these internships are real gems. I mean, if you can get an internship with a PwC, a Deloitte, a KPMG, and so on and so forth, and do a good job, you get a job out of it. And it's at a minimum, it's a terrific resume item. So, and you get paid well for these internships. So, if you know of someone that has gotten an internship and beat out the competition, so to speak, by lying, then that's not good. And to walk around as a professional, as this Jack the intern is, to be a professional in this setting means having to look at what's morally right and wrong, and not just let it go if it's wrong. And like some students have said to me, I wouldn't rat on the guy because I don't think that's right. But it is right, because there's someone who's been a victim. And that's the thing to keep in mind. Who's been hurt by this? Some potential intern did not get the job because this guy got it, and this guy got it because he was dishonest. The next one, my laptop is missing. You might want to read that laptop policy that's back in the folder after this one, after reading this one. And some of these you could just kind of stop the tape, so to speak, stop the video, and think about these before I comment on them. Maybe that would help you work through them. In this quick scenario, Marsha calls her colleague Phil to tell him her computer may have been stolen from the back seat of a friend's car. Despite the incident occurring the previous morning, she had not reported the theft. Students in the KPMG classes are then asked, I call them students, they're entry-level accountants, are asked to determine which of Marsha's actions was the most serious. So you understand the scenario. This is this concept really of the protection of assets, the issue of internal control. We must realize that in today's business world, it's very common for mobile devices to be issued out of company resources. I have a laptop, I have an iPad that UMass Dartmouth has paid for or leased, and they're not my property, but I have an important duty to safeguard this stuff. So she's gotten into a situation where the computer was left in the back seat of a friend's car, and I don't know if the car was stolen or whatever, but the laptop is gone. The laptop was stolen. It's an important incident. When you're an accountant, you've got a lot of data on that computer. It's not even just the fact that the computer might be worth a couple of grand. It's that you have valuable data on there that you don't want to let that get out. So what's the worst thing? A, leaving the laptop in the back seat of the car. B, lend her car to a friend. C, delay reporting the loss of the computer. D, keeping confidential information on her laptop. Well, first of all, keeping confidential information on a laptop is going to happen. You acquire confidential information in the course of doing your work. So cross out D. D's not the answer. Leaving the laptop in the back of the car is dumb. It should have been locked up. And I think a lot of these policies would say that. So that is certainly a candidate for a correct answer. B, lend her car to a friend. Well, that happens. That's kind of irrelevant. If the computer wasn't in the car, we wouldn't, The problem is she was a little loose with the computer. C, delaying the reporting of loss of the computer. Actually, what KPMG says is C is the correct answer. I always feel like A was what I'd like to answer. So sometimes there's two good answers, A and C. But their point in training these people is that, look, if you make a mistake, don't delay in doing the right thing. Report it. For one thing, what might happen is they can, lots of times remotely, shut these computers down. There may be something that can be done, or track them right away, get the police involved, or something. Take quick action. The worst part to me is she left it in the backseat of the car unsecured. So if you thought A, you know what, I kind of go along with you, but C is also important too. So that one's a funny one, A and C. All right, let's see. What's wrong? In this scenario, Carrie, a staff member of an engagement team, is experiencing retaliation from the senior manager for going around him and is dealing with whether she should risk reporting the retaliation. Carrie tells her colleague Phil that she has recently been told by her immediate supervisor not to go around him. Additionally, these instructions were shortly followed by being pulled off a hot new client project to work on inventory counts. Therefore, the scenario alludes to the individual Carrie being retaliated against for raising an issue above her immediate supervisor. The colleague Phil indicates that Carrie needs to report the retaliation, and she is undecided what she should do. So, retaliation, kind of bullying in the workplace, it certainly happens. There's politics in the workplace. Supervisors hate it when you go over their head. There's times when you have to. If you read the IMA's ethical standards, if you, for example, have a supervisor that is embroiled in the middle of whatever the ethical conflict is that you're concerned about, it may require that you go over that person's head. I know back when I was in the real world full-time working, I had many situations where I was concerned that if I went to my boss, the thing would just be killed because my boss was maybe in the, right in the middle of the unethical conduct. So sometimes you have to make a very hard decision and go over that boss's head, so to speak, up the chain of command. And that sounds like what has happened here, and Carrie is being punished for it. And you might say, well, what's the big deal? She got taken off a thing, a hot assignment, so on and so forth. It's not fair. It's just not right. So what is the appropriate thing for Carrie to do? A, she should go to a superior such as engagement partner again and tell them what happened. B, she should go to another resource such as professional practice or risk management partner for guidance. C, she should file a report using the ethics compliance hotline. D, she should wait a few weeks. It will blow over, and if she stays quiet, she may get back on the hot new project. Well, if this is considered in her mind to be significant retaliation, punishment, D is not an option. Okay? The A, B, and C are all options, and she would have to figure out which is the best way to go. Now, C is a situation where she could get additional guidance, and I would imagine that's probably what KPMG would tell her. Call the ethics compliance hotline, which a lot of these companies have, where you talk to somebody in a confidential manner and get advice as what to do next. It might be that she has to go to what they call professional practice or risk management partner for additional guidance, but the fact of the matter is she should not let this go. And I recommend that to you. I don't want you to be troublemakers in the workplace, but I also want you to stand up for what's right. And don't allow bullying to occur. Get with the program. In this scenario, Lisa tells her colleague Phil that she gives her administrative assistant a gift certificate to take her required training course for her at lunchtime. She alludes to the fact that everyone does it, and that it's almost impossible to further your career if you do not participate in such behavior. Accountants have to find time. People working at a CPA firm, people who hold CPAs, CMAs, CIAs, CFEs, all these different certifications, you got to find time to do your continuing education. And some of it involves, just taking a quiz online, taking a conflict of interest quiz, reading an article, taking a quiz. You're picking up these 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, these little Teslets that give you credit to build your numbers up. Remember, a CPA's got, in most states, has to do like 90 hours of this over the course of 3 years. And when you get towards the end of it, you might need help, so to speak. You shouldn't go and get anybody to help you with it. You should that's cheating. You should do these yourself. And so, what should Phil do when he hears about Lisa's doing this? A, confront Lisa and tell her that having someone else take your training is dishonest, unethical, and violates the firm's compliance requirements. B, let Lisa solve her own problems. This has nothing to do with Phil. It's none of his business. C, file a report using the ethics compliance hotline. D, ask the administrative assistant to help him with the required courses too. Well, D is actually one of those stupid, outlier, dumb, multiple choices. So it's not D, of course. It's looking at this, again, there's some gray areas here. They're going to tell you in these kinds of settings that you just don't ignore these things. B is not an option either. It's between A and C. I guess got to be what you're comfortable with. But I think KPMG would say do C. File a report on the ethics and compliance hotline and let someone in the company look into this. It's a practice that needs to stop. It discredits the profession. It's cheating. Now, the next part of this, I'm not gonna go through this, but it may be the kind of thing that you find helpful in organizing your notes and going through some of the ethical, the ethical IMA ethical standards that are up on my courses. And just some questions. We'll take a look at a few of these, but I'm not going to answer them. We do answer them in the face-to-face class. We have discussion about these, but I don't want to. I'm going to leave it up to you online folks to look at these. And it's thought-provoking items. Number one, why ethical standards important to the practice of accounting? And it is. What is it about ethics that is so critical to doing accounting right? Ethical standards are also important to the operation of business. Why is it? By doing right, how does that help business? Some people say it doesn't, but I don't believe that. Most enlightened folks think that ethics, good ethical behavior, is good business. Why is that? Number two, number two says, please consider each of these scenarios in light of the IMA's ethical standards. So what you might want to do is print out the ethical standards, take a look at these. Well, let's just quickly go through them. I'm not going to give the answers, but we'll just quickly go through and see what we can pick up with a few quick tips. A, you're an accountant working within a company and you have great influence over the purchase decision regarding a new AIS. One possible vendor wants to give you a $25 gift certificate to review the new version of this software. Do you take it? This hint here, conflict of interest, but is $25 enough to sell your soul to the devil or whatever? That's the question. B, same scenario as above, but you'll notice there's a much bigger payoff. Do you take advantage of this opportunity? Probably obvious to you, no. You don't. That's a huge conflict of interest. C, your boss is the controller of a company and asks you to add to a revenue report $50,000 of sales for this month. He says the orders are firm, but the goods have not yet been shipped. Upon explaining your concerns about booking the sale, which you should have concerns because that's not GAAP right there. Please record the sale, the boss says. I'll stand behind it as your controller. What do you do? Well, you might, big hint here, competence would tell you that if you know your stuff, you don't do that. And also, this is dishonest. Integrity. Your integrity would be at stake because it's dishonest. Misleading. D, sounds like I'm answering these, huh? I'm trying to leave them so you can think about them. So I'm probably doing you a disservice by giving you the answers. So maybe what you should do is use my first few examples as a way to go through these. Take a look at each of them. Go to the standards. See if you can come up, see if the standards give you guidance. Your own personal experiences in life, good common sense, good ethical background, good morals might also guide you through it. But the standards, which are back in my course's ethics, when I say the standards, I mean the standards of the IMA. Just stick with those. Those might be of great help in looking through those.